63.7% Jan Feb, 62.5 is where. So ADHO clearly has gained in the LHO segment, and because all the actions that we have taken and seen the growth in the rural as far as ADHO is concerned, and that is what I was alluding to in my Q3 call as well. One of our most heartening fact is the kind of growth we have been seeing in ADHO itself. So ADHO in the quarter grew by about 40%, both value and volume, in spite of the price increases, because the larger packs have done well in ADHO. Obviously, as you can understand, the sachet and the 10 rupee packs are not as strongly doing across category itself, even for us. So there has been really good growth as far as ADHO in this quarter. Not only in this quarter, overall for the year, if you look at ADHO has now recovered sharply and is at 6% growth overall. So both value as well as volume. So pretty good performance. If you are talking of the incentive structure, yes, we have now redesigned our incentive structure. We have now, as you are aware, we have put up a trade marketing as well as a sales analytics team. So a lot of work has been done tweaking in terms of looking at specific, rather than give just on overall value and volume. Now it is based on a lot of parameters that they need to deliver, both in terms of the total line sold, in terms of the distribution coverage, in terms of product level sales, the targets that we have for our ADHO, targets we have Amla, etc. So there is a lot of tweaking which has been done for the incentive commission of the frontline sales force as well.
Very clear, sir. So we got a long queue. I had actually one more question, but I just want to leave the question and we could move on. We may address during the course of the call. Some thoughts on the international business ramp up in the medium term thought process would also be very helpful.
Okay, so very quickly, international, as I had said, maybe 5 quarters back or 4 quarters back, is clearly an area which is, to me, a low-hanging fruit. It's a hanging fruit. I don't think it's a low-hanging fruit at this stage, but it's clearly an area which is there at the corner of my mind at all points of time. It's a question of when. It is definitely not a question of whether or not. It's always a question of when. My point is we want to stabilize our India business a little more. Rather than stabilize, I'll use the word strengthen the India business a little more. And once we have done that, I think international is clearly one of the areas to focus on. So on the midterm, international will be taken, but a clear the thing is where we can make money. So some of the markets where traditionally you don't really make money will not be our focus areas. But in the places where we say there is a possibility of both top line and making a decent bottom line, those are the markets we'll be focusing on. So limited focused approach in international, maybe from next year onwards, is what we should expect.
Thank you, sir. Raymond, you should get back to the queue.
Yes, thank you. We take the next question from the line of Percy Panthaki from IIFL. Please go ahead.
Hi, Jaideep. Congrats on a good set of numbers. I have 2 questions. My first question is on the price increases versus the cost inflation you have seen. So your gross margin is down 700 bips YOY. If I don't look at YOY because of whatever high base, etc., or low base for gross margin, even if I look at Q4 FY19, that is 2 years ago, the gross margin is still down about 450 basis points. In context of this, your price increases in February and March have been about 2.5%. So just wanted to understand the thought process here. Are we saying that the gross margins that we have seen in FY19 and 20 are clearly not repeatable going ahead, and we are okay to take sort of material hit to the gross margin, and that will be the new normal? Is that what the thought process is?
Okay, so this is a nuanced question, so it will have some multiple layered answers. So if that's okay with you, Percy.
Sure.
So first and foremost, if you look at a very, very broad-based approach, yes, there might be some dilution on the percentage EBITDA, which has been continuously being alluding to, because if we dial up our entire business and ADHO, and if our top line keeps growing, which cannot be only fueled by ADHO, and we start building our portfolio around, not all of them will have the kind of margins that ADHO has. A classic example.
If I might just interrupt 1 minute just to clarify my question. My question was on gross margin more than the EBITDA margin.
Yeah. So gross margin. in this particular case, gross margin itself. So let me revise the statement remains same, except you can replace EBITDA with gross margin.
Sure.
So the kind of gross margins that you make in ADHO, so products like Amla, etc., which is obviously a little more competitive, will not make it. The idea in that is always, as I said, and this is where EBITDA will come in, is that as long as AHO gives us a positive EBITDA, which is what we will drive, and then percentage EBITDA will obviously keep climbing up as the business grows and the costs of sales, promotion, advertising on the brand itself go down accordingly. So as far as Amla, etc. concerned, that is the approach. Because if you're trying to build a portfolio over time, then the kind of gross margins that we have seen in ADHO will not be replicable. If you look at across all FMCG companies, etc., we would be at one of the highest gross margins. Now, this is all possible if you retain and remain only with one brand. But then whether this brand alone can sustain itself, whether you would want to ring fence this brand with other products, etc., is a call that we have taken. And the answer to that we have taken is yes, we need to ring fence. ADHO will remain a flagship brand for any time foreseeable future, but we would also want to put some more products in the portfolio. As I said, we would like to build this 100 crore brands over a period of 3 to 5 years, some more brands which may or may not have that kind of margins, so to say. Having said that, this particular quarter has been a little peculiar. So really speaking, taking this particular quarter out and seeing whether this is a long-term trend, I would like to think no. Because if you see, while we are one of the first ones in the FMCG companies to come up with our results, I would expect the kind of inflation that we have seen in terms of raw material prices versus the price increases that I see in the marketplace. In the almond category, obviously, we are the only ones who have taken price increase. And across most categories, other than coconut, etc., there is no long, broad-based price increases that we have seen from any of the hair oils players, right? So managing and I would like to assume that the kind of inflation that we are seeing, most of the other companies would see a similar kind of a gross margin, while product assortments, etc., may be different, but they would also be seeing a similar pressure on their gross margin. So obviously, we'll monitor the competitive landscape. We have taken a price increase, definitely not as much as the raw material price increases happened in this quarter. We are again contemplating and seeing how we want to see it, and maybe in this quarter we might take a price increase. We have not yet decided, but maybe we will. So we will try and mitigate some of the effects, but we will not be passing on the complete impact of the price increases that we have seen in terms of raw material and packing material prices onto the marketplace, because reversal is not so easy in a FMCG kind of a setup. I can't increase the price and then go back and reduce the price after some time. Possible, but not something that desirable. So hence, you might see some movement that has happened in Q4 as well as in Q1, but I think by Q2, etc., you should see normalizing of the gross margin.
Understood, sir. Second question is on the top line itself. See, from a COVID point of view, out of the 4 quarters of FY21, Q4 has been the most normal. And actually, as we go into Q1 of FY22, etc., it is again deteriorating. So Q4 is the best quarter if you look at the last 3-4 quarters as well as the next couple of quarters. And in this relatively sort of good quarter, although the YOY growth is very robust, on a 2-year CAGR, we have basically grown at just around 1% or so. So just wanted to understand, you said your market shares are increasing. So that means actually that the hair oil category on a 2-year CAGR has not really seen any material growth. And if that is the case, how do we think about modeling in our next year numbers? In the best quarter, if we have seen close to a 0% growth and things are deteriorating, is that really a big risk to the FY22 top line growth?
Okay, so again, Duan's question. So first and foremost, we have not set the market share growth. These are Nielsen data. So they are under indexed, as I said, but these are what Nielsen is reporting. Second thing is, I think we'll have to look at the year that has gone by in a little more structured manner, so to say. For example, Q3, if you look at, 2 things happened in Q3 this year. So one thing that happened in Q3 was that the Diwali fell in November, so the sale, Abhyang Snan and many other places where we have some spikes in Diwali happened in the month of October this year. So that's why you are seeing a 20% growth in October this year, on while last year October, December was also a reduced base, but we had grown by 20% in Q3. So that is one part. And the other that happened was Q1, Q2, there was a lag of demand. I don't think there is enough fulfillment that had happened of our both our distributors as well as our wholesalers, etc. So a bit of pipelining also happened in Q3 this year. So if you compare to Q3 to Q4, I think the sales has been pretty robust. Now, if you look at 2019, 8 quarters back, I think there were some specific incentives that we had taken. I think that time we had mentioned that also. There was a specific program that we had taken to boost our sales in the quarter itself. So we had taken a huge spike in quarter 4 of 2019 itself, as well as there was all this Nomarks, etc., that we had also taken up in this thing, which we had to take some of it back in Q1 of 2019-20. Yeah, that's correct, 19-20. So there was some impact in Q4 itself. So it might be a little more balanced if you were to not look at a specific quarter and compare, but maybe look at the trends for an overall period and see how the numbers are. So this is how I would like to say this performance of this particular Q4. So Q4 may not have been the best quarter as far as sales is concerned in this particular area. In my mind, Q3 was definitely the best quarter as far as sales. So this is one side of it. The other is going forward as far as 21-22 is concerned. Obviously, we had very, very robust plans as far as 21-22 is concerned. Now, all of it is being revisited and revised based on what we see. So at this stage, if you say, how do we model for 21-22, really speaking, it's a difficult question to answer because we don't know. We had seen pretty decent sales starting in the month of April. So it was going very, very strong. And in the last 7 days, we have been seeing sporadic disturbances in Madhya Pradesh, in Chhattisgarh, in Delhi now, in Rajasthan has started, Maharashtra, Gujarat as well as there, UP, 5 cities, whether they'll go under lockdown or not. And every day we are revisiting. So really speaking, modeling based on what is going to be expected, etc., we don't know. We had originally planned to have double-digit growth, yes, but now we'll have to see how it works out.
Got you, sir. Just a small sub-question. For Q4, do we have secondary sales growth higher than primary or roughly they are in line?
No, secondary sales growth. In fact, if you look at primary and secondary, both are actually similar. So that's not the problem. But there is again, in terms of base correction. So last year, for example, primary for us was very, very low, right? But secondary was still okay. So secondary growth as such is lower, but primary and secondary is same for this year. So there is no build-up of inventory as of now. In fact, we had specifically ensured consciously that year-end we don't build up any inventory.
Got you, sir. Got you. That's all from me. Thanks and all the best.
Thank you, Percy. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prakash Kapadia from Anived Portfolio Managers. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I had 2 questions. If I look at employee costs at this year at around 83 crores. Now,
yes.
You could give us some sense on, the variable component in this and, on a going forward basis, Jaideep, is it, fair to assume this will be more or less in line with the top line growth for 22 and beyond? And secondly, you did mention about, rural demand in your opening remarks. So given what has happened in the last few weeks, the second wave is, spread across India, unlike, metro cities earlier. So currently what is happening on the rural side? Because, that has been a big growth driver last year. So are we seeing, some demand tapering off? Are we seeing deferment of purchases? Are we seeing downgrading? Give some color on these 2 points.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the employee costs first. Now, as far as employee costs are concerned, it's being looked at in 2-3 areas. One is in terms of, I think, the corrections we wanted to do as far as the management team is concerned. I think we have done most of it. There might be a few more corrections which are required, but most of the corrections have been done as far as the management team is concerned. We wanted to have it a little more robust team as such. On the other hand, we are now engaged with one of the leading consultants looking at entire reorganization of the structure, looking at manpower capability, cost-wise, the kind of output that they deliver. We are doing a complete benchmarking against all companies, etc. And in the next 2-3 months, we might do some restructuring based on that as well, which will basically push our costs a little downward in terms of more of rationalization of cost. So we would like to invest only in the areas where, as far as manpower is concerned, where we are seeing growth, etc. Now, looking at the second part of your question, which is basically what were you doing about variable pay and fixed pay? Yes, we are now continuously dialing up the variable pay component of each employee, and grade-wise, we are making it different. As you go senior right up to my level, the variable pay itself goes far higher based on the year's performance, while the fixed pay remains much more muted. So it is graded, and for the senior management team, there is a far more emphasis on the performance of the company and the thing as far as the pay structure is concerned. So this is what we are doing. So going forward, my thought would be that going forward, we would like to, even with inflation, that is basically increments that we'll keep rolling out year on year, I would like to see the employee cost as a trend going down on a continuous basis, mainly supported by the sales being higher in terms of percentage than the employee cost. That should be the direction that we want to take, and that's a target that we have taken for itself, and I think that is decently achievable. I don't know what will happen this year. We'll have to see how the year pans out, but I still am confident that we should be able to do it even in the year 21-22. So this is as far as the employee cost part is concerned. As far as the rural markets are concerned, now, frankly, this is too early to say. As of now, even in the beginning of April, rural continued to boom and has been doing well. Even today, if you ask me, exactly like last year, where the lockdowns, etc., happened, the impact of the lockdown is still lower in rural. So while we are hearing all these news, etc., about rural also being impacted, people are getting infected there, but I think the rural markets are still pretty much open. We are still, like yesterday when we were talking to all the SOs, like our sales head was talking to all the SOs and he was briefing me, most of the rural markets still he's not struggling as far as whether it be in the van sales or whether the ISR is going to the marketplace, not really. So we still don't see the impact, but yes, we'll have to keep monitoring it. It's very difficult to say what will happen 15 days later.
Yes. Thanks. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tejas Shah from Spark Capital. Go ahead.
Hi, Jaideep. Thanks for the opportunity and hope the team is keeping safe. Jaideep, you spoke about gross margin in the beginning in detail, and you mentioned about some write-off and sanitizer inventory. So, would it be possible to share that number in quantum? What was that number?
In terms of quantum, if you look at sanitizers, we have written off about a percentage point. So about that is what. So it is not a write-off. We have just taken a provision on that. It's basically all the packing material, etc., that we had accumulated in the months of May and June because we were over aggressive as far as sanitizer thing, and I think most companies were. So that time, whatever we had left off, we have thought that it is prudent that we take a provision on the books, and in case later it gets reversed, so be it.
Okay, so percentage point in terms of gross margin is because of that.
As far as the sanitizer inventory write-off is concerned, also we have done a little bit of our FG, whatever balance FG sale that we had done a barter deal of that sanitizer as well. So that has also impacted a bit on the margin, but that will be less than a percentage point. So these are the two things that have happened.
Sure. Second, now when we look back our history in the last 10 years, when we were pegging ourselves versus all the light hair oil companies, our pricing power was very dominant because we used to compare ourselves with all the relatively premium hair oil companies. Now, when we have redefined our target audience as a broader hair oil market, we have to compete with raw material like copra also and amla also, which are relatively low priced products also. So does it mean that now that the kind of pricing power that we witnessed earlier to protect gross margin may not be the same? And in that line, how would you like to play this whole gross margin and EBITDA margin dynamics? Because you have been vocal about that it has been relatively higher versus FMCG standards. So you have opportunities, and considering the long pipeline of products that you have talked about in past, you will like to support. So where do we see the margin profile evolving because of all these factors from here on?
Okay, so Tejas, again, two parts to the answer. The first part is ADHO in isolation. Now, ADHO in isolation will, the only thing that we have been dialing up is continuously the premiumness of the brand. So if you look at our entire approach this year, is basically to look at the new gen customers and look at how ADHO can be priced at absolute the premium. So here, if you see, compared to the compatriots in the ADHO category, in the LHO and whatever almond category, etc., we are just keeping on pricing ourselves further and further up. So our premiumness on ADHO is going further and further up as we take price increases and as we go forward. So really speaking, ADHO is not where we would look at margin dilution at all. So the way that we are looking at is in the portfolio play that we will do. There overall, if you look at the margins, etc., obviously because it will not have the kind of margins that ADHO has, it will have some reduction in gross margins, but that should end up at an overall gross margin which is higher, as well as an EBITDA which is much higher as an absolute term, and that is what we have been focusing. So ADHO's premiumness will not be dialed down; it is in fact being dialed up. So all our investments, so that's why I was saying our monies in terms of advertising and whatever brand building as far as ADHO is concerned, that is not going to be compromised. That's the last cost that we would like to cut.
Sure. But any visibility or guidance on margins?
As far as the full year quarter, as far as Q1 is concerned, I think the margin pressures will remain. As you are aware, there has been continuous, the inflationary trend on raw material has not really subsided. And this is something, so LLP has not subsided, RMO is at its all-time high, PET is high, polymers are high as a result of that, PET is high, paper is high, so corrugated cartons, etc. high. So every cost is absolutely at its peak, and we still don't see downward movement. So as I said, we will be contemplating a price increase, but we are also keeping a corner of the eye. We are also looking at what competition is doing and where they are taking their increase. But most likely you will see a price increase by us. So quarter one, you will see pressure. By FY 21-22, I hope things will normalize and we should be back to normal levels.
Sure. So my question was exactly the same. So when you say normal level, it means 30, it means 28, it means, so where would you like business to operate from here on, considering the diversification agenda you have?
If you look at, I would like to benchmark myself against most of the other top FMCG players and keep our EBITDA margins a little higher than that. So as you see, if I have to, without naming this, I look at the EBITDA margins of 20, 22 and 23 of two of my competition and somebody who's much larger. We would like to keep it at about that 25% kind of an EBITDA margin going forward with launches of brands and with sales growth, etc. So obviously it comes with riders. So with those kind of things. So as I said, my focus is to keep it at 25% plus, hovering between 25 to 28, but more focus is to ensure that EBITDA as an absolute keeps expanding. So that will be the focus. That's where we will be focusing on. So keeping the EBITDA on a positive, on a continuous basis, for that whatever needs to be done. Yes.
Very helpful. And last one, Nomarks is missing from discussion today. So any plan there?
Okay, so this is a subject we have kept on discussing in and on within the company. Now there are only two options as far as Nomarks is concerned: either dial it up through what we had done about 2 years back, or basically look at an exit. So at this stage, exit doesn't make too much of a sense because there's not too much of money to be made out of the brand. There are not too many takers of the brand, and we are not in a desperate hurry to exit. So we have revamped 1 or 2 products in that category, like the creams, etc. But beyond that, there is not too much that we are focusing on Nomarks. We'll keep it at business as usual, not too much of focus as far as Nomarks itself is concerned. There are a lot of other products that we wanted to launch in the e-commerce pipeline and some of in the GT channel itself. That's where we'll keep our focus on. This does not include Nomarks.
Great. Thanks and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Aditya Kondawar from JST Investment. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. So last quarter you said that in the next 2-3 quarters we are going to see more of e-commerce and digital-only brands. So I just wanted color on the kind of products or the product extensions that you're looking at. And number two, what is the e-commerce contribution to the total revenue? Thank you.
So e-commerce has now got up to about 3% of our turnover. So it's continuously going up on a quarter-to-quarter basis, and that's a very good sign, because this is somewhere we would like to go to about 5% in as quick time as possible, and maybe take it even beyond if we can. So that's the aim, and I think e-commerce has been doing pretty well. ADHO itself has been doing very well on the e-commerce platform, as is Zero Grey, which has started showing now some traction, and so on and so forth. So really speaking, overall we are well placed. The B2, and very clear our focus is on the B2C only, not so much on the B2B part of the e-commerce, because while it adds up to the numbers, it really is not e-commerce the way you would want to look at e-commerce, right? So there is a qualitative part to it as well. So this is e-commerce as such. As far as the launches are concerned, both e-commerce as well as our GT launches. So the product extension, which is basically Almond Drop extensions, etc., these were more for the GT channel, and the e-commerce, which is the premium end. So our branding work is over, the products are all ready. Now it's basically an opportune time. Now, because these are high-end portfolios, these are not essentials. We would also monitor how the pandemic goes. We had originally said that it will be end Q2 stroke beginning Q3 when we would like to launch these products. Now, our back-end work continues, whether be it in terms of designing the products, naming them, branding them, getting the packing material, etc., all standardized. Everything is already there, where we make it, what kind of formulation, what kind of claims. Most of it is already, the back-end work continues without interruption. It's just that when we would launch, we will also tactically play it, because not being essential, we would like to launch it when we think there is the best time to launch any product. So whether it is Q3, whether it is Q2 end, or whether it gets pushed by a few months, is something that we will take call later, closer to the date rather than now.
Sure, that helps. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Shirish Pandesi from Centrum Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon, Jaideep and team. Hearty congratulations from my side. I just have a few questions. The first question is that on a FY21, the full year growth is in the range of about 9.5%, 9.8% to be precise. Would you please break up what is the price and the volume overall?
See, if you look at the volume growth, again, because our assortments have quite a bit changed, the volume growths are quite different. So our value growth rate is 9.8% on basic sales, on sales of goods, that is, while our volume growth is close to about 15%, 15. So that's what that has come up, and that is mainly because of two product categories. One is obviously the Amla, which has got scaled up. The other is also sanitizers, which is at a lower price that we have sold. So these two products actually helped grow the volume more than the value. As I said, Almond Drop had a 6% growth on both sides, value and volume. So this is where it is.
Okay. On a base of say 10% growth in FY21, it's just an observation what I came to know from the presentation. You have said that your Amla penetration is roughly about 388,000, while your overall penetration is much larger, maybe 2.5, 3 times. So I just have one question, that if you assume that your van operation and you are now trying to rationalize the van operation, and I think if there is a scale at which you are bringing this, so can we assume more than 8-9% volume growth for FY21, FY22?
See, I would have been very comfortable giving this answer maybe about 15 days back. But given the way the pandemic is going on, is really a little futile to give. I can give you my planned numbers, and the answer to that is yes. You could have factored that in your plans, etc. And I think we had a pretty robust plan and pretty confident that we would be able to execute that. But given the way things are panning out, I still think that we will be able to achieve that because we have put in enough buffers in our system to be able to manage those kind of numbers. But I really don't know what is going to happen in May, June, etc. April seems to be still okay. April will still sail through, is what it looks like. But May, June, July, I really don't know. So we'll have to wait and watch. I think every company will be impacted similarly. I think we have a pretty good network, and I think one of our advantages, because we are very focused in only hair oils in our category, etc. I think in times of pandemic, etc., we have been able to react a little better because the larger the assortment, I think going and reaching out has been a little difficult, more difficult. I mean, I'm not getting into this entire discussion between essentials and non-essentials. At least in a category-wise, it has been easier for us. I mean, we found it easier to bounce back in Q2 when the market really opened. So we are still finding it pretty okay to be able to operate in the businesses that we are in, and the kind of initiatives that we have taken in Vans, Amla, ADHO in terms of rural growth, packs, etc. Still doing well, but we'll have to see how it goes. Yeah.
So follow up on that, Jaideep. You already had a Amla product, and you also added aloe vera Amla franchise to that. And when I look at the market leader is trying to play the value game at the Amla end of the pyramid. So do you think you have a merit, and I'm counting on the distribution part and penetration, which is up north and middle India. Do you think Amla will surprise, or rather Amla is surprising you in terms of growth rates and what you have estimated that new product what you have launched will have a much more bigger scope and play in your revenue contribution?
So other than the surprise part, everything answer to your entire question is yes. I think there is an upside to Amla. Will it contribute to a decent, significant portion? The answer to that is also yes. Are we surprised? I would say no, really no, because this is exactly what we had planned. And going forward, this year also we have a pretty strong plan in Amla, and I think we should be, COVID or no COVID, we should be able to execute and achieve those plans, etc. So we had some more plans as far as going a little heavy on in terms of communication, etc. That we will see when and how to launch. We will phase it out based on how the market places. Now, as I had said even last time, it's a 2000. What you'll have to remember is a 2,200 crore market dominated at one end by one player and the lower end by the other player. Really speaking, not too much else other than the variance of various products. And if you see, that's exactly what the other two players are also doing. They are taking out variants to cut each other in those marketplaces. We see there is enough and more space for us. If we want to have a aspiration of 100 crore brand, which is about a 5% market share, that in itself, given Amla is a category where traditionally the markets where we have strong distribution, which is the Hindi-speaking belt, and that is the exactly nicely fits in to where we want to sell. Really speaking, I don't see that as too much of a difficult exercise, and that's how the market is also reacting. So yes.
Okay. If I'm not too much pressurizing on margin, I have one question on margin.
No, please.
I think the way I look at it, I think what you have done, and in your presentation again, I'm picking up the saliency for rigid packs like bottles has gone up significantly, and that has also reflected into the volume growth. Assume that the pandemic is elongated for a little longer time, and consumer would upgrade from sachet small pack to the bottle. I think in your numbers, I think you have been trying to be super conservative in terms of margin performance on ADHO. Given that you have already taken a risk of taking a price increase, and if the material prices are going to go up, you can take another round of price increase. So tell me, something is, if I'm missing something in this.
No, I don't think you are missing anything on that. I mean, I think, there is no point over-promising something unless you are completely confident of what you are going to deliver. So what I can visibly see is all I can state. So yes, you are absolutely right. We have clearly seen the larger packs doing very, very well last year. All the larger packs, right from the newer launch of 160 ml, which we launched, the 99 rupee pack in the eastern markets that we launched, right up to 200, 300, for 500, as well as the 615 modern trade. All of them are showing good traction. The 3 ml, the 2.5 ml, that is the sachet, is not doing well. 19 ml is not doing well, the 10 rupee. But again, we have launched the 20 rupee, which was a gap last year. We have been continuously saying that's the largest growing pack size, rupee category, and we are not present in that. Now that is showing good traction, and we are spending some sales promotion money to ensure that packs also catches on. So I think we are well covered as far as ADHO on both sides. And as far as material cost is concerned, yes, most likely we might take a price increase this quarter. It's most likely. Let's see, sooner the better. So yes, we'll mitigate some part of it. But as you can see, the kind of unprecedented price increases that happened in raw material and packing material, this is the first time we are seeing an all-rounded price increase. So whether it is LLP or RMO, whether packing material, whether it is in terms of glass, PET, cardboard, CFC, everywhere the price increases are happening. It's not only a single. Most years, if you see, if LLP has gone down, RMO has remained stable, has gone down otherwise, etc. Now it is completely inflationary all across. So it is very difficult to pass on the complete thing to the consumer, especially in this kind of time.
Okay. My last question is, you spent a lot of time giving us some dope that you have hired a consultant and you're looking for a management structure. So if you can give some more understanding what exactly you are looking at, what the management structure, is it more leaner or it is more compact, or is it going to be more larger in terms of area of operation?
No, we are not looking at the management structure. We are looking at the entire organization structure. So basically what we are trying to do is we are looking at mapping of our structure, both in terms of capability, our people, their job scope, relevance, and basically doing a map across the industry as well as what our aspirations are, what we need to do. So basically, obviously, one of the objectives will be to optimize, but it is also to try and make it future ready. So where we see there is a fat or there is some fat to be skimmed, we'll skim it, and where there is requirement to be dial up, we will dial up. So as far as the management structure is concerned, I don't think even as we see from the consultant what we have done versus what they are proposing, there is not too much of a difference. So at the top, you may not see too many changes over and above what we have done, but overall in the structure, you might have some restructuring. It's not that we'll let go of people or something, but yes, some structural changes will keep happening over a 2-3 year period where we make it a little leaner, yes, and far more accountable as people are concerned. Accountability of people and jobs, salaries, all being commensurated with the kind of work they are doing, designation, so that there is aspiration as well as equitability across the company. That is very, very important. That's what we are trying to drive at.
Yeah, I completely agree your thought, but in an analyst world, what it means essentially, are you or have you given a target to a consultant for a cost reduction or job optimization?
That is the target given to our HR guy. So it's more the consultant's objective has to be to optimize this thing. The target of reduction of cost, etc., is more for the HR guy to do. Yes, there is this thing, but more than just looking at what absolute number cost is to be reduced, we have a target for where we want to see the HR employee cost expenses to go. We are looking at how competition is operating, everybody else is at, and we want to benchmark ourselves. Being a smaller company, obviously the cost structures are a little higher, so that as sales gets adding up, I think the cost itself will get neutralized. So costs are expected to go down over time, both as a result of rationalization as well as in terms of increased sales, which should bring down the percentage of cost. There will be not too many additions to manpower for sure.
Wonderful. And thank you, Jaideep. That was a wonderful commentary. And all the best from my side.
Yeah, thanks, Irish.
Thank you. The next question is from Dixit Doshi from Whitestone Financial Advisors Private Limited. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Sir, you mentioned about the new product launches in the later part of Q2 or Q3. So I understand this is also in other than the hair oil category.
Yeah, Dikshit. So basically, as I said, as far as e-commerce is concerned, we'll not only restrict ourselves to hair oils, but get into the newer formats in hair care as well as very adjacent personal care, if at all. If we Because we have been doing continuously on consumer research, consumer insighting. We have a consultant who has been working with us for the last 3-4 months on that, looking at branding, what works with the customer, etc. So the only areas that we will get into is premium hair care, other formats, or very, very adjacent personal care format. Nothing beyond at this stage.
And so that will be predominantly for e-commerce market only, not the traditional market.
No. So as far as the hair care premium end is concerned, yes, absolute. That premium end, yes, that will be traditional only for the e-commerce market. But for the personal care extensions that we are looking at, some of the extensions, yes, they will be for the general trade as well. But that launches might be about Q4 actually.
Okay. And just wanted to understand your thought process in other than the oil market. So wanted to understand that this will be kind of one of the products we will be trying, or this will be new normal, like every year or a couple of years we will be adding 2-3 more products other than the oil segment.
That's absolutely correct. That's what we would aspire to be, but we will also keep reacting and continuously keep ourselves flexible. Aspiration-wise, that's what we would want to do. Develop an e-commerce portfolio which is a little more robust, which is a little multiple branded under maybe a single brand umbrella or 2 brand umbrella, different formats going to the customer, so that there is enough choices for the customer, etc., which is under the e-commerce umbrella. As far as regular brands are concerned, traditional channel, as you put it, there maybe one launch at a year or 2 launches based on how much we can absorb, both in terms of cost margins as well as EBITDA. So we'll have to keep a watch on that as well.
Okay, so that's it from my side. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
The next question is from Naman Kumar, who's an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity, and just a feedback to the management on what I'm observing on the ground. So I live in a small town in Himachal Pradesh, and in the last few months, I've been seeing the push of Bajaj Amla in the shops. Like even the small shops, I could see Bajaj Amla hair oil on the shelf. So yeah, so that's interesting to observe. Like whatever initiatives you are taking, that we are able to see on the ground. But from question perspective, I have. I'm not sure if you will have the answer. It's kind of an abstract question. Like, would we know what is the demography of our consumer in ADHO category? And the reason I'm asking is because personal care products are sticky in nature, right? So if someone has used it, they'll continue to use it for their life most of the time. But are we able to capture the younger generation who are becoming independent or like who are starting their own new life? Like, are we able to capture them in with our portfolio of ADHO?
Yeah, that's a absolutely fantastic question. I mean, why I say fantastic is exactly the question that we had been asking ourselves in the last 1 year, and our entire approach towards ADHO has also changed. So while we look at ADHO being a flagship brand, etc., our consumer market research continuously keeps saying that brand is not offering anything new to us. There is nothing much else happening as far as the brand is concerned, and there is a risk of lapses, etc., and especially the new generation. So if you track our entire approach towards digital marketing, looking at the new age, I touched upon it a bit in the presentation, but there is an elaborate work that the marketing team is doing exactly to try and touch base with the new gen customers. Because if you are talking of premiumness, it also needs to be viewed as a premium brand. Not only a nice brand as far as packaging is concerned, sitting at the trade shop, but also kind of user content that you are generating as far as the brand is concerned, influencers that they're talking about in Instagram, Twitter. I mean, it should be a happening brand. I mean, one of the great feedback, I mean, a lot of consumer work that we have been doing in the last 1 year. So one of the consumer insight that we got last year was that while if you see a customer of, let's say, urban Bombay, maybe South Bombay, what they are saying about the product as far as aspiration, etc., is concerned, is no more than that we see in a middle class household in Indore or in Jaipur, because they have equal aspirations. It is not that they have a lesser aspiration because they are maybe not so much urban, so to say, as far as people are concerned. And that is our approach. Clearly, it has made us thinking, and our approach towards it is that ADHO needs to be seen as a very, very strong happening brand, much more connected to the youth, etc. And that's how our entire digital strategy, digital portfolio, where you have seen that we have dialed up heavily on digital spends this year, is addressed to that. So you're absolutely right, and this is exactly what we want to do, so that the newer age customers are not lost for us.
Okay, makes sense. By any chance, is there a plan to change or modify the packaging a bit just to appeal to the younger generation? So to give you an example, right? So Bajaj Zero Grade, like the packaging may appeal to the younger generation, but the target customer are people who are in their 30 and 40s. But if you see ADHO packaging, it looks okay for people who are in 30, 40s, but if you see from a younger generation perspective, it looks dull, whereas Bajaj Zero Grade looks very appealing to a younger generation. So is there any plan in just to change the packaging just to target the younger generation?
Again, a very interesting question, but unfortunately, that's a double-edged sword. So because whatever Bajaj Almond Drop stands for, you'll have to remember that it is still a 800 odd crore brand, and the kind of clientele that it has across the length and breadth of India, that is not something that you so easily play with. So that entire approach of the shape of the bottle, the glass of the bottle itself, which is, I mean, there has been a lot of hue and cry that why can't we at least get the 200 ml or the larger packs, 200, 300 ml into 200 ml basically into PET bottle, etc. Now that appeal of the glass for the 50 ml, 100 ml, 50 ml, 100 ml, 200 ml is not something that we want to risk playing with. So I completely appreciate your point, and that's why in terms of visual appeal, etc., we have done as much as possible, dial up that almond drop, etc., that you see in the bottle, and that itself has given good feedback, etc. This thing, but packaging itself, we don't want to do too much because there is too much of a existing clientele to play with.
Yeah, understand. And one last question is, in the presentation, I see on one of the page with Bajaj Amla, there was ADHO soap as well. So is that a soap launch in the pipeline in the coming quarters?
No, this is that the one that you saw is typically what we. This is an existing product. It is not for sale. It is a product typically given to the Maharashtra customers during Abhyang Snan. We also use the product to give it to some of the other consumer offers that we package it with this thing. At this moment, this is not a product which is for sale.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Avi Mehta from Macquarie. Please go ahead. Mr. Avi Mehta from Macquarie, you may go ahead with the question.
Hi, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, hi, sir. Sir, I just had one question. You highlighted that demand trends are broadly similar as of now versus to the last lockdown with rural urban divergence in terms of that. I wanted to kind of just get your thoughts on how is the situation different when it comes to competition, both organized and unorganized, and in terms of channel readiness, how the different channels are behaving. Thank you.
See, if you talk between the first and the second lockdown, it is too early to say. I was saying that as of today, we don't see too much of a difference. Yes, there has been sporadic lockdowns that has impacted a bit of business in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh and a bit in Maharashtra, where our business is not that high as compared to others. But rest of the country still keeps chugging along in spite of so much of hue and cry. But that at no point of time saying that what will happen fortnight later. We really don't know. So as of now, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. There are some learnings that we learned from last year's pandemic. So those we are now activating as in terms of stocking up our distributors, trying to ensure that they don't get stocked out if and when there is a lockdown, because clearly distributors and wholesalers are much better placed to ensure that the supply pipeline remains while larger companies like us might find difficult. So that is something that we will continue to keep working, and I don't see too much of a change as far as that is concerned. Yeah.
And in terms of competition, sir, anything that is it going to be similar in your view, or how would you see that, or anything
So
on the ground?
I would assume they would have also learned from their last year's experience, and I would not, as of today, I don't see any competitor, whether be it in our field or it's a little larger FMCG space, doing anything very differently. Everybody is trying to dial up their distribution, trying to ensure that material is available at the front line, retail shops as well as the wholesalers and distributors back in the pipeline. I mean, pipelining is all they are focusing in. So yes.
Sorry, I meant the smaller players, just to clarify. But okay, I get
Well,
it.
smaller
There
players,
is not much difference.
So that's an interesting question, because last year smaller players across categories you saw getting really impacted during the quarter 1, and they took real long time to bounce back. So not in our category, for all other categories you saw them really struggling. So they have found means and methods to come back, and I would assume they would be a little better prepared than what they were last year. So what the organized sector found so easy to basically acquire from the smaller players last year may not be that simple and easy in the categories that smaller players also operate.
Fair enough, sir.
This
That's
is my
all.
assumption, but really speaking, this is just crystal gazing. We don't know how the pandemic will play out.
Sure, sir. Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir. That's all from me.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Aditya Malpani from Branston. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So just one question. So rural is one market and one segment where we have seen very strong growth in the last couple of quarters, and even last quarter we see 60% plus growth. So I just wanted to understand, is it possible to bifurcate that? How much of that growth came from our vans operation, or maybe from the focus on distribution, versus from the actual recovery or the strength of the rural market?
Well, I would not like to exactly split the data, and I'll tell you why. Not because I don't want to share the data. It's more because you see, while so just to give you a rough cut kind of numbers that we are getting through vans, let's say about 10% of our business comes through vans now. 10, and maybe at times it goes to about 12% of the numbers come through vans. Now this number is a little has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because there has been obviously a bit of cannibalization that already happens, because existing wholesalers from the larger cities, existing subs that we have, sub-stockists that we had, which now today are getting advantage because of the van sales, they would have been doing some kind of a business, right? So it is not that the entire thing would have been off if you had not had the van sales. So yes, there has been a bit of a cannibalization that would have happened, but that is expected anyway, because you are anyway servicing the same channels. But if you look at the distribution numbers, clearly, I mean, our internal understanding, because we still don't have everything automated as far as the van sales operations are concerned. I mean, we are installing all the softwares one by one, so it will take some time. So there we clearly see our direct distribution numbers, which used to be about 5.2 odd, is now up to about 8.5 in terms of including the van. So clearly we see distribution reach much stronger, and that typical thumb rule that you take of 20% of indirect distribution should be direct. So that numbers I think we are now comfortably doing. So clearly that is happening, and going forward our aim is to this year look at urban distribution as well, which is basically direct urban retail distribution. That was the focus for this year, which we would think we will still continue to do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rohan Samant from Multi-Act. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Jaideep. So my question is more on the tax rate. So if we look at the tax rate, it's around 17%. when do we see it normalizing to around 25%? So when does the tax benefit expire for us?
So the MAT, this thing will continue for about another 3-4 years, so about 2000, because now, as you are aware, Dehradun got out in May of 2019. Ponta size factory, which is the HP factory, that got out in March of 2020. And so this year we have, that's why you see that other income has fallen this year. So the only place where we see the MAT benefit being taken, the budgetary support, is Guwahati, which will should continue till about 2027. So we are still good to go for another 4-5 years.
Okay, so for the next 4-5 years also we should have an effective tax rate of similar 17-18%.
Yes, that's about right. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Devanshu Sampat from Yes Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, Devanshu, you are.
Yeah, hi sir. So two broad questions from my side on the overall strategy. Right. So many quarters ago, Mr. Sumit Malhotra had mentioned that it doesn't really make sense to play the hair oil only play, given that it gets difficult to differentiate and pricing itself cannot be the USP. And there are incumbent players who have already a strong hold and position in multiple categories. So it's amla, coconut, or cooling hair oil and such. So and basically his view was that it'll be tough to break into these segments while maintaining profitability. And of course, the strategy right now is to double market share in the overall hair oil space by entering such categories. So how has the thought changed, your view on this?
So, except your last statement, all of it is correct. Yes, for a time when Bain was engaged, the thought was to take the market share to 20% in the hair oils category itself. I think my sense is I would rather tweak that just that point itself, rather than say that the objective was to take it to 20% market share. I think the objective of the company is to double the revenue of the organization over that period of time, rather than double the market share. Because the moment you say double the revenue, then you are no longer restricted to only that hair oil segment. Because if you hear both these statements in unison, there obviously seems to be a bit of a conflict, right? On one side, what you rightly said, what Sumit had said, saying that some of these markets, it will be difficult to really be money spinners if you have to get into some of these categories, etc., which is correct. And on the other side, if you say that you want to go to 20% market share, now only ADHO cannot give you 20% market share. I mean, I would love to have that, but that's really possible. Looks like more like a aspiration rather than an expectation. So given that, we would like to have a more reasonable mix where we see that we can have profitable, maybe not kind of profitability of ADHO, but profitable brands that we can establish, reasonably decent sized. We will play in the hair oils market. Amla is an area where we will play and we see profitability there, easily available, not profitable in the sense that we make in ADHO, but positive EBITDA coming in from there, and being a decent size in terms of top line. That is there. Maybe there are one or two hair oils as well, in some premium hair oils and some niche, and maybe some of the others which I may not want to discuss at this stage. We are just in a contemporary stage of that. So that we will play. Along with that, wherever we see there are rights to win for us, this is what we have been talking of. We would like to play. So whether it be that hair care or the adjacent personal care, again, looking at where we can make a positive EBITDA in 3 years' time, and it's a sustainable EBITDA that we can do. So with this put together should be the composite strategy of the company, so that at least we can look at doubling our turnover over a reasonable period of time. Yeah.
Okay. And taking a previous participant's question, so there was, on the non-hair oil product launches. So from your perspective, what are the expectations in terms of how much they could contribute, and will this be the area that you're largely looking at for acquisition?
So acquisition, unfortunately, you cannot pick and choose. I mean, there are opportunities which will keep coming up, and we'll have to evaluate. The way we would like to look at an opportunities, not whether that company can add value to us. It is the way I would like to look at an M&A opportunity is whether we can add value to that company, rather than whether that value just adds on to my top line and bottom line. Because managing a acquired company also has its own nuances. So if we see an opportunity which is at the right value, which obviously is an important point, then we will look at, first thing we'll look at is whether we can add value to that company, whether our strength of distribution, our marketing skills, etc., we can take that company further. Only then we will take it, rather than look at. We might look at some acquisitions if they open up in some forays for us where we are not strong, but in areas where we want to go and very, very closely associated with us, in areas where we already have some kind of strength, not completely diverse from us. So this is where we would like to pick our acquisition options for. Yeah.
Okay, sir. And sir, last question, any update or development on the Worli property?
So the Worli property at this stage is all there. So we'll relook at it now. The COVID times are going on. So we'll keep looking at it, and maybe in the coming quarters we'll keep you update as to where we are as far as that property is concerned. We have that aspiration to build that property here. So when, how, etc., is something that we'll have to see.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, and wishing you all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sunil Jain from Nirmal Bang Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, congratulations, sir, for good number. My question is with longer period, what's the game plan for the company? Like you're already there for over full year in this year, and how you think the company can be in next, say, 3 to 5 years? How much share of the total revenue this ADHO will have, and how much more product you can add up in that particular period?
See, if you look at, I think I have been stating what our action plan is. One of the action plan is obviously continue to keep dialing up the premiumness of ADHO, continue to get more new age customers into ADHO bracket, and dial up ADHO in places where we are not that strong itself, which includes apparently high market share for us. Even there are enough pockets and more for us to be done. So ADHO will be a complete 360 plan, and we want to continue to focus on ADHO so that ADHO keeps having healthy growth. I mean, I don't think it's a no-brainer as far as we are concerned, the way we are structured. So ADHO focus cannot be diluted, its premiumness cannot be diluted, its pricing power cannot be diluted. So this is something that we'll keep dialing up. Along with that, we will keep building the brands that we have been talking about. Some of the hair oils which we want to grow to a little reasonable size, where we see potential for us to have some size as well as make a positive EBITDA and be in a comfortable zone. So those kind of products, as well as some premium hair oils, premium hair care range in the e-commerce that may not initially have large value basis, but as we keep adding more and more products into that portfolio, we want to create a brand over the next 3 to 5 years, which is recognized as a brand coming out of Bajaj in the e-commerce portfolio. I mean, I would not like to say in the Mamaearth or the Mamaearth on the WOW, because those are really have taken off really well. But that is the kind of directionally is where we would want to go as far as brand is concerned. And then also have some of the Almond Drops extensions or Bajaj extensions in some of the other hair care or personal care products where we think we have some rights to win. So that is roughly the portfolio that we will do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rohan Samant from Multi-Act. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity again. So my question is mainly on the Amla hair oil market. So can you kind of quantify what is the size of that market and how much of it would be unorganized? And when we talk about Amla hair oil, gaining market share, would it be mainly from the unorganized players, or we would be kind of taking it away from the organized players?
As I said, the market size, I mean, that's the easier part of the question. The market size is about 2,200 crores, and that has been one of the highest growing markets, right? This year, if you look at this market, grew about 6% in the year itself. So that's a pretty good growth that we saw as far as the Amla market is concerned. 6% in Q4. So 2,200 crores, and as you can understand, these are Nielsen numbers. So these are on MRP. You have to discount it by 30% to get the net sales numbers. As we report the numbers, if you want to have an equal to equal, then discount about 600 crores. So about 1,600 crores is the net sales value, so to say.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the size of the Amla market. Now, if you're looking at how much we want to gain share out of some of the regular competition or this thing, I think that's a very difficult question to answer. I don't think as a company you target where you want to take market share from. You basically position your product. Basically, obviously, you have a competition in mind where you want to take it, but you don't actually state it upfront saying that, okay, this is where we want to take it. You position your product, you look at the markets you want to sell at, the kind of pricing and the promotion that you would want to place at, and the kind of brand aspiration that you have, where you would want to take it, etc. And that, as we said, is where we would want to push this brand to about 100 crores net sales numbers. That is on the 1,600 crores kind of a number, which is about a 6% market share, which I think is pretty doable over a reasonable period of 3 years from now.
Okay, sure. But how big would be the unorganized market within this, or difficult to quantify?
I mean, I don't have the numbers, I would assume. So, Abhishek, do you have some numbers? If you can just type it out for me. I mean, unorganized sector. I'll just respond back to you. I would assume it is about 30%, but let me just take the numbers. No, I don't think we have the exact numbers for the unorganized. But all I can tell you is that both the larger competitors have a range of products which come under this. I mean, in the last few years, you have seen a plethora of launches in different variants of this Amla, etc. So it's no longer the typical two dominant brands alone. They have also their variants, which has been doing well. So very interestingly, you might see, and if you were to look at the data, some of the variants are actually cutting into the main brand itself of some of these things. So that's a very interesting analysis to see, because the larger brand is getting cannibalized by the smaller launches, which obviously, if you focus on two categories of the same brand, I mean, there has to be a give or take somewhere. So that's a very interesting observation. Is all I can say. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That was the last question in queue. I would now like to hand the conference back to the management team for closing comments.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for patiently hearing us talk. I think, as all of you have rightly pointed out, I think the work for us, as well as I think for our country, is cut out for the year going forward. While we have all our plans in place, both in terms of the marketing work, the sales work, as well as in terms of a lot of work has been happening on supply chain and manufacturing, as well as the HR. I think all of it will have to be continuously kept on doing, and in sales particularly, we need to remain flexible. And on a day-to-day, as the ground situation keeps changing, we have to continue to keep changing our strategy as well. In this time, flexibility is the only key, and we have to keep learning from what we have learned in the previous year and try and implement it better. I think for the first few months now, I think execution will be of prime importance rather than of strategy, and that is what we will be focusing on. So while strategy is all there in place, and we have a clear-cut thought as to what we want to do in 21-22, some of it, as I said, in what we wanted to do in Q2, etc., we might want to revisit later, closer to the date, if that is required. As of now, we are not changing any of our plans. We are going ahead with what we wanted to do, but we'll keep revisiting on a 15-day, 1-month basis, etc. So by Q2 end, by Q1 end, when we have the call, maybe we'll have better light. Maybe or maybe not, I don't know. So we'll see how it is. So as of now, April has started well. We'll see how the year goes. And so thank you for all your interest. Thanks.
Thank you very much. On behalf of ICICI Securities Limited, that concludes the conference. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. You may now disconnect your lines.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.